He's a writer, civil and human rights activist, filmmaker, author of 15 books. His latest is a collection of poetry, Grocery Shopping with My Mother. He's a very powerful man. He literally has pow, just one R away in his name. He also happens to be my birthday twin. So we share a lot in terms of how we move in the world. Let me welcome the great Kevin Powell to the Karen Hunter Show. Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Hi, long time no see.
Thank you for having me. I think since, what was it, March, when we did the Black Writers Conference. It's been a while.
Yeah, you were on fire. It was like you came in with the same low energy, and then something sparked, and then you got up. It's like, oh, shoot, it's about to go down. Yes, I'm going to need that energy today because I bought 10 tickets. Well,
oh, wow.
Yeah, well, so there's two things. Of course, I'm a support, but I'm also paranoid. I don't want people breathing on me. So, I had to build a perimeter with seats around me. so I'm like, I'm buying a seat in front, seats on the side. Yeah, making sure. And then I did it at 2 theaters because I'm like, algorithms. All right, I'm going to do it at another theater that's, in Secaucus. So I did that with the reserved seating and bought five tickets there. When did you see it? I feel like you might have seen a screening or something.
No, I paid for it. I bought 2 tickets. I saw it on Thursday at 4 p.m. in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. I was like, I want to see the first screening that's available to me that I can pay for. And it was incredible to experience. There were a number of women in general in the theater, but particularly older Black women, which was fascinating. And older Black women like my mama who talks back to the screen. So it was really dope. You get, with Black folks, you get 2 shows. You get what's on the screen, and then you get what's happening in the audience. And it was beautiful because, you realize this is a very unique experience for so many people. I mean, as I sat there, I was thinking to myself, and even after, because, such a heavy film, many layers, outside of the movies of Cicely Tyson when we were growing up, Pam Grier as a kind of a superhero figure, but in a very different way with the blaxploitation movies. You haven't really seen much of anything like this, led by Black women in this way. So it was really incredible to experience. And I'm ready to talk. I have a lot to say, and I'm ready to hear your callers because It's been a heavy weekend on social media with people in all different places talking about this movie.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I even last night, because I was catching up on some of my TV, so I watched Queen Sugar, and I had filmed that. And then, of course, they were previewing Oprah Winfrey's sit down with Viola Davis. So I was like, okay, I got to watch that. So I watched that last night. And, Viola in this interview, she says, and I wanted to put this, she said with Oprah, every night she puts her daughter to bed. And she tells her story. She's been telling her story since she was a little girl. Made up stories, right? Made up stories. And her daughter said, Mommy, put me in the story. Put me in the story. And this was the inspiration for her doing this film because she realized of all of the works, everything that she, and she is a trained thespian. She has done everything in other people's cultures. And I've often said, trauma porn, Hollywood loves that when it comes to us, which is why they're going to give Oscars to 12 Years a Slave. They're going to give all the Oscars to, I just need to be clean, the soap and all the, like everyone who plays some downtrodden, oh Lord, we get Oscars for like Miss Minnie and the Pie. You is kind. You is, like anytime. And I don't even know if it's on purpose because I think it's so baked into the culture globally that this is the position of Blackness. And this is somehow, it's cathartic for white folk to see us in these positions, right, of familiarity, which is why it's kind of ironic the first Oscar was won by Hattie McDaniel, right? So, and that throughout history, whether it's Denzel playing a corrupt cop or Halle Berry being a bedwench or, you go through Monique and Precious, bedwench, I don't know if that, and I love Halle Berry, but we get celebrated for roles that make them comfortable.
Yeah.
And we get to relive our trauma. In this movie, and to your point, Kevin, I don't think, and the only thing I could compare it to was Django at the end. It's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
But that was Quentin Tarantino, and I can't really, be but so because he's complicated for me. Not really. I really think he's. But this was Viola. This was Gina Prince Bythewood or Bythewood. This was black women and John Boyega doing his best Denzel I have ever seen. If we're gonna do a biopic on Denzel, we need John Boyega to play Denzel Washington because he brought all of that. But it was something I hadn't seen before.
It's incredible. It's incredible. There's so much I want to say, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. But you
don't have to. We got a whole hour. Go ahead, bro. Talk.
Or more.
Talk your talk. Or more. It's up to you.
Yes, ma'am. So it's I've never seen anything like it in my life. I sat there and I just digested it. And we're going to get to the historical accuracies and things like that. But I need people to understand, because what bothered me this weekend were people were commenting on the film and they hadn't seen it all over social media, because of this ridiculous. We're not even going to get into that right now. But I'm like, first you have to see a film, and then you do your own independent research on stuff that you saw. You know what I mean? It would be like going to see Spike Lee's Malcolm X film, and you had never read the autobiography of Malcolm X. You had never listened to any speeches of Malcolm. You didn't know anything about Malcolm X, but you're commenting on the film. I'm like, do your own deep dive. The purpose of a film, whether it is a completely fictitious film or it's more specifically, if it's historical fiction, which is oftentimes what films are, because we're talking about, for The Woman King is 2 hours and 15 minutes, and so you have a certain amount of time to put into this thing, and you have to talk about what you're going to focus on. I think the film is incredible. The acting is amazing. The cinematography is amazing. The directing by Gina is amazing. Who we've seen, for years, going back to her TV writing with Different World, directing Love and Basketball. I mean, she's The Secret Life of Bees. I mean, she has an accomplished career as a black woman director. People don't talk about that enough. You know what I mean?
Can we change the language, Kevin? I just need to. As a director. Yes. As a director. See, because even calling this The Woman King in African culture, ancient Africans put these they didn't draw boundaries around women and men and all, even the genderizing of things, but saying like, it's like black excellence. It's just excellence. She's a great director. Period.
Gina is a great director. Viola is a great actress, period. It's like people always point to the scene in Doubt where she's rolling with Meryl Streep, who arguably is one of the greatest actresses ever, without question. But like for me, it ain't just about Meryl Streep. I'm like, when I think about great actors, I think about Cicely Tyson up there. I think about Viola Davis at this point, because her body of work is incredible. And, the thing what The Woman King reminded us of, I feel, is that the cinema has existed for over 100 years, but we have erased Black women for over 100 years from any kind of opportunities like this. You know what I mean? And it's tragic. There's been many books and articles about it, but it's just like, there are Black women. My mother worked in the fields. Yeah, my mother worked in people's kitchens, but we also have Karen Hunter. We have Viola Davis. We have people like my Aunt Bertie, rest in peace, who only had a grade school education when she migrated from the South to the North, got her GED, used the GED to get a nursing certificate, became a nurse, and used that money to get a college degree, became a homeowner up and down the state of the point I'm making is that we don't really ever see the complexities and layers of Black womanhood like we just saw in The Woman King. We very rarely see it. And the interesting thing to me is even, is it believable? People are finding every kind of fault with it. I think that a lot of responses to the film are both sexist and racist. I mean, it saddens me, Karen, as a black man, to hear a number of brothers questioning just the title of the film without seeing the film, understanding what the film is about, or I'm like, if you can go see the Black Panther film, then you should be able to go see The Woman King. If you can go see some other Marvel stuff, then you should be able to go see The Woman King. If you can go see Braveheart, then you should be able to go see Woman King. If you like action films, if you like war films, you want films that are layered in this kind of way. But it's just like, some people have used things to hold them back. But the beautiful thing about this weekend is it made $19 million, and it's the number one film in North America, and is now projected to make at least $100 million. And that's going to be because of word of mouth. because sisters are going to be like, yo, we going. And some of us brothers, we will go. More of us need to go. You know, they said that Black folks and white folks are the two audiences that are going to see this film. You know, I think that young people need to see the film. You know, the thing that hit me too, and I'll end it here for a second, Karen, is if you go back, just Google it, y'all. Google Viola Davis's speech at the Toronto International Film Festival when she talks about being a dark-skinned Black girl, 6 years old, prostrate on the ground, being called ugly, all these names. Well, that's my mother she's talking about. That's so many Black women and Black girls that we've seen who, you know, if you don't fit into a certain kind of image of what so-called beauty is, you know what I mean? If you don't have a certain kind of nose or lips or hips or all of that, hair texture, etc. And we know that every single one of us is beautiful. All sisters are beautiful, no matter what they look like. And I feel like what this film is saying is that they are brilliant, they're beautiful, they're powerful, they're warriors. They help to build societies. You know, anyone who knows Black history knows that always has been the case. Ain't no civil rights movement without Black women. Ain't no Garvey movement without Black women. Ain't no Maroons in Jamaica without Black women. Ain't no Haitian Revolution in Haiti without Black women. But, you know, the thing is that we have got to stop acting like Black women don't exist. And I feel like this is what this film is doing. Now, if y'all want to get stuck on historical accuracies and the arguments about slavery and who enslaved who and who participated in the slave trade, I'm down to have that conversation as a scholar, as an intellectual, as a writer, as someone who loves history. But for a second, can we at least acknowledge the fact that for over 100 years of cinema in the world, at least in America, which is the, you know, most powerfully cultural country in the world, we've never seen anything like this.
866-801-8255. His name is Kevin Powell, in case you didn't know. All of the things. Can we spend some time, brother, talking about, because I feel like if we don't solve this problem, so I'm going to go back in time, all right? So brought here, however we got here, right? And historically, the Woman King deals with that complexity. Yeah. I thought they did that brilliantly. I thought they did it seamlessly, actually. And it is what it is, right? And Laree breaks it down even further if you go back and listen to her show today, Laree Daniel Favors. But I want to talk about what 400 years of emasculation, of placing, because I don't know what that feels like. Even the hierarchy that we follow, watching the queen and this whole, you know, status of the child following the status of the father up, unless we got to make money. This whole system that we're under is twisted backwards, and it's a big hypocrisy. There's one big hypocrisy, right? But on that plantation as a man, you couldn't have a wife. You couldn't have children. You couldn't have yourself. And in many ways, and I think about the Old South after enslavement, there was no respite for Black women with the brutality of Black men who couldn't kick the oppressor. So the only place you bring your aggression is into the home. And that has been a secret, not so secret, because many of us lived through it, Kevin Powell. And I know because I've read your stuff. We've lived through it, right? But we don't talk about it. But that is actually foundational right now in how we relate to one another. So when you see the Woman King, people are triggered by that because, well, what about the Black man? But I'm like, there's never been a paucity in support. There's never. But now there's this rift because there's a breaking point. At some point, the secret's not going to be secret. Hi, R. Kelly, Bill Cosby. You're seeing the dominoes fall, right? Nobody's going to be quiet anymore with the brutality. You're not going to just be able to do whatever you want, Irv Gotti. Not going to happen, right? But also now there's an acrimony that I feel like if we don't fix, Kevin, the freedom that we all know is right there, because it's right there. That's why we're seeing all of these things happen. It's right there. Let's stop the division. Stop the whole, he's African or they're from the Caribbean. They're not really Black. I'm not really Black because I'm from. Stop that and stop the woman, man. The Black woman, she trying to take over for the man. Stop that. Stop that. Stop. The man ain't ish. I don't need a man. Let's stop that. Let's stop all of that. Where do you think we are right now in terms of women, male? Come on, let's have this conversation.
Well, I mean, my late teacher, Bell Hooks, Dr. Bell Hooks, always said we need to name what the problem is. White supremacy, or what people call racism, patriarchy, sexism, male domination worldwide. Racism is a global system. slavery is a result, is one of the things that benefited from this global system racism. And then this money thing, what some people might call capitalism. And so it's done great disservice to us from the very beginning. I mean, to me, think about it, Karen, we've been in this game for a long time. 25, 30 years ago, we didn't use terms like trauma and trigger and mental health and mental wellness, but these are necessary terms that I'm so glad have become a part of our vocabulary. But then the question begs itself, well, where did this trauma come from? And it's like, Brian Hurt has a film out that's very important right now called Hazing. And one of the most important things in the film, y'all can watch it on PBS streaming, is when he starts to talk about some of the root causes of why are we, and I belong to a fraternity. Let me make that clear. I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. But what I do not support at this stage of my life and for the rest of my life is violence in any form. And I certainly am not going to support violence that I know is coming out of the oppression that I ended up internalizing when I was kidnapped from Africa, brought on those slave ships, in the hulls of slave ships through the Middle Passage, dropped off in places like Brazil and Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Jamaica and Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago and Georgia and South Carolina, where my family's from. And knowing that internalized oppression found its way on plantations, women and men in all identities were raped, assaulted, brutalized. It's interesting that we're having this conversation. I'm literally rewatching the original Roots in between watching The Woman King in the theater. And, you see that story of Kunta Kinte, who being stripped of his name. Your name is not Kunta Kinte, it's Toby. Stop with that African stuff. Get rid of all that, your previous spiritual practices. All of that stuff is primitive. It's evil. It's not of God. It's not what we think it should be. They were assaulted in every kind of way. And so we're talking about a people literally who have had an abusive relationship. And then if you internalize that abusive relationship, how are you going to find love with each other? You start to forget, wait a minute, we were kidnapped together. We were brought on those slave ships together. We worked in the fields together. We worked in the house together. We went through segregation together. We survived Wall Street bombings and Wilmington, North Carolina bombings and all these other bombings together. And here we are in 2022 at each other's throats, literally, over the Woman King, the stuff I see on Instagram and other social media platforms, just like this kind of ugliness. But it's still back to what Bell Hooks said. If you don't understand the foundation of it, and how we're programmed consciously and subconsciously to hate ourselves and hate each other, we're not going to have healthy relationships. I mean, when you think about the Woman King, why would I as a man, why would I as a Black man be upset that a movie is centering Black women? Why would I as a heterosexual, so-called straight Black man be upset that a brother who is gay presenting is in the film and no one's making a big deal out of it? Well, I'm like, well, how can I say I'm anti-hurt, oppression, discrimination, any of that stuff, if I turn around and do the same thing to other people who look like me? You feel what I'm saying? And so, we have to learn how to love ourselves. And the sad thing is that, we've had so many things happen in the last 10, 15 years, everything from the Obamas in the White House to, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, George Floyd, all these things have happened. So we've had these sparks, but what's been missing for us, Karen, in my humble opinion, is a kind of consistent movement of us where we raise our consciousness, where we can get past some of the stuff, just like how we had the civil rights movement from 1955 to 1968, roughly, the way we had the Garvey movement in the 1920s, 100 years ago, where we were constantly saying to each other, we are powerful, we are beautiful, we're in this together, we can't hurt each other, we can't hurt ourselves. If one wins, then everyone wins. What we should be saluting is that someone like Viola Davis, who's the same complexion as my mother, is not only an Oscar-winning actress, but she and her husband, Julius, Black love manifested right there, producing partners, decided to risk everything and create a film that actually is going to save the lives of so many people, especially Black girls and Black women. I don't see how that's not a victory for all of us.
I needed that to sit. 866-801-8255. We're going to take a couple of calls. Kevin is sticking around. Kevin Powell is his name. You can follow him at Kevin_Powell and KevinPowell.net. His latest book is Grocery Shopping with My Mother. It's a brilliant set of poems dedicated to an amazing woman. And Viola Davis is the exact same complexion as my father. And reading her story, I just finished her book this year. We're going to talk more about this. Let's go to Melinda in Baltimore first, though. Melinda in Baltimore, welcome. Hi.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Great.
Let me first say you're fantastic. Your Fridays, you recommended a movie, RRR, and I've been trying to call you since I saw it.
That was months ago. Yeah.
It was months ago, but I've been trying to reach you just to tell you I loved it so much. I made my whole family I said, you got to watch it. It's 3 hours, but you got to watch it.
Yes.
But I went to see The Woman King. Thought it was absolutely phenomenal. If I was still in the classroom, I would make it something I took my kids to see, because I think that I saw a woman standing strong. And I don't know if we remember a scene where she goes out against the king, and behind her is a man, and behind her are her women and other men. And it was a community of Black people working together for one goal.
That's right.
My daughter got something off of Instagram where they said, boycott this movie. Crazy. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. I'm not only going to see it the first time, I'm going to go with my girlfriend. I'm going to buy it when it comes out and I can buy it. I thought it was phenomenal. I think everybody should see it. The concepts that were in there, a teacher could use to teach kids about being a community, about not killing each other, about uplifting them. My father was a really fair man. My mother was Viola Davis's complexion. She got 5 kids, all different ranges. So we have learned to love each other. We have learned that it was from the beginning. But that movie was absolutely phenomenal. But another word, so was RRR.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to put them in the same category, but, you know, we celebrate culture here because we're the global majority. Go ahead, Kev.
I just want to say, I'll take any of your recommendations. I saw it's another one about sleeping, Sandman or something like that. I watched that too.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Melinda.
Melinda in Baltimore, thank you so much. And I just, you know, I just want us to understand too, that if we're going to call for boycotts of things, then we should actually really be consistent about it. I don't see anyone calling for boycotts of some of the music videos that I've seen over the last 20, 25 years of some of the most heinous minstrel-like images of Black people that has existed since minstrelsy was the #1 entertainment in the country from the middle of the 1800s through the middle of the 1900s at least. You know what I mean? And so we got to ask ourselves, who's programming this idea of quote unquote boycott to this film? Y'all need to support the film, number one, you know, because I also think that there's a lot of cowards out there and a lot of people that are placed in certain spaces to kind of distract us and reroute us and say, don't support this film. And if you're a sheep, if you allow other people to think for you, then you'll just go, well, I'm not going to go see the film then because it's justifying slavery. And as you said, Karen, the film actually deals morally. You can see Viola Davis's character and other characters grappling with, you know, this notion. And I think I need to say this. I need to say this because even Henry Louis Gates wrote an essay, an op-ed in the New York Times many years ago that really, really angered me. And I respect who he is. I respect some of the work that he's done. But, you know, this notion that Black people just willingly participated, you know, in enslavement of our own people, we need to be very clear about it. Europeans came to Africa with guns in one hand, Bibles in the other hand, and literally overwhelmed the continent of Africa. You know what I mean? And one of the tenets of racism, systemic racism, is classic divide and conquer. Let me pit people against each other. Let me create artificial boundaries. And so it's not as simple as saying, well, the Dahomey people participated in the slave trade. It might be that they had no other choice, because if they don't do it, then they're going to be enslaved or they will be killed. And so we need to understand that it's very complex what happened to Africa. And you still see, I've been to Africa. I don't know how many of y'all have been to Africa, but when I went to Nigeria and I saw that there were over 400 languages spoken in the country, you feel what I'm saying? These boundaries called Nigeria, and there's all these different types of people inside of this place called Nigeria. I said, this is all artificial because I know history. I understand the transatlantic slave trade. I understand how Europeans came together in the 1880s and started to carve up Africa. And I understand that part of the reason why World War I even happened was a result of the carving up of Africa and the Europeans fighting with each other over territory. Who's going to be the most powerful colonizer in the world? And so if we don't understand that, then we'll have someone say to us, oh, you know, the Woman King is about, you know, Black people enslaving Black people, and I don't want to watch that. No, that's not what the movie is about. That movie is about, in spite of everything that Black people had to deal with, here are these amazing group of women, you know, the Goji people, you know, who were called the, you know, like African Amazonian women who literally were warriors who fought to try to protect themselves and their community as they were even grappling with this moral issue of slavery, which is no different than what we grapple with in Black America and other parts of the world when slavery was happening on this planet with our people.
Nothing smiz, no dings, no horns, nothing. Come on. His name is Kevin Powell. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Brooklyn. Kevin Powell is here. He's going to be staying with us. We're going to go to a break. But what you said, if you have the energy to boycott the Woman King and don't have the energy to boycott the 5011 rap songs that call me and you bitches, you a N-word, you a hoe, promoting all of the debauchery, all of the drug dealing and the sex and the violence and the killings in our community. If you're okay with that, but mad about this damn movie, have several seats. You've lost all credibility to have any kind of conversation, period.
He said, everything that you ever wanted is on the other side of fear. And you know what? I feel like my entire life, I have allowed myself to be defined by a culture. I have allowed myself to be defined by the naysayers. I was dropped in the middle of a profession that is all about deprivation. And so a lot of times you just allow other people to define you. And at 56 years old, I have come to the realization that I could define myself. This film is for the risk takers. I love you too. But this film is for the risk takers. This film is for the people who maybe even are the naysayers, who didn't ever believe that black women, especially dark-skinned women, can lead a global box office. This film is for the Tusos, the Lashanas, the Sheilas, the Adrians, the Siomas, the Jamies, the Sias, the Masalis, the black women who are out there on the periphery just waiting for the conduit, a vehicle, to shine your beautiful and glorious light. And I am proud to be a part of that. Really am. I said that this film was my magnum opus. But it's my magnum opus because it's everything that I ever dreamed it could be. That we can be humanized. We can be all of those things. But it's also for my 6-year-old self that I sort of left prostrate on the ground in Central Falls, Rhode Island. The little girl who was traumatized, the little girl who was called ugly, the little girl who was not seen, who was left invisible. I see you, Viola.
We see you, Viola. Kevin Powell is with me. Somebody on Twitter said, can he come back every week? I wish he could. I ask him frequently.
I think you asked me to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Listen, I know goodness when I see it, but I also know that goodness is busy.
Apologize.
No, you can't apologize for doing the work. We are greedy in the sense that, when there's somebody who has your breath. I mean, you talk about being a student of Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde. We've talked about her as well. It is, you've been poured into, you've done some things, you've made mistakes, you've come out of it, you've become a better human being because every day you work on it, your yoga, your meditation, your spiritual walk. I mean, it's been amazing. We've kind of been on parallel, trajectories throughout our careers, crisscrossing from here to there to be where we are right now. And there's no coincidence because the work was put in. So yeah, I would love to talk with you every day. So I'm glad that you're giving me this time. So thank you.
All praises due to God, but thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, let's take some calls. And he's giving me a little bit more time. So we're going to take some calls and then we're going to have a conversation. Let's go to Gregory, who's been holding on for a while in Ohio. Hi, Gregory. Welcome.
Hello. How are you, Karen? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Welcome to you. Thank you, Mr. Powell. Thank you, Professor Hunter. I am a Nubian. Karen, we've talked before. This movie has so many governance conversation stimulations to unpack that you can't do it justice on this show. But anybody that listens to the echo chamber about they said, they need to listen to what your heart says and go see what happens with powerful Black women.
That's
what
right.
we have done in this country is not paid attention to the fact that matriarchal community is much more powerful than anything that the patriarchs brought to Africa and have created in this country. So, amen to you both. Keep doing the thing.
Thank you, Brother Gregory. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Let's head over to Virginia. Roxanne, Nubians Unite. Hey, Roxanne.
Hello, Karen and Kevin.
Hey.
Let me just first say to Karen, thank you for having such an awesome platform that educates and empower people of color. This is your whole venue is something that has been needed. I wish you were here 10, 15 years ago in this same magnitude of what you're doing now. We could be so much further ahead. So I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you, sis. And as a member of the Nubian community, I feel like I truly belong, and I have really, really connected with a lot of the Nubians in that platform. So thank you. Thanks to Dr. Carr and all the other people that are on Nubia. You guys are awesome. You rock.
Thank you.
I also wanted to say to Kevin, is right on point. This whole movie, let me tell you, I took my 17-year-old son or 16-year-old son and some of his friends from high school, and I plan on taking a whole group of young people. They loved the movie. I gave them some context in it, and that's how we have to do. We have to create our own narrative. We have to teach our own. We have to pour into our young people so that they understand that we are dynamic. And so I took some young people, and they really, really, truly enjoyed this. And I just want to say we need to start defining and creating our own narratives, which I see this promise through Nubia. And as a Black woman, I feel that I really could associate and relate to many of the elements that were going on in Woman King.
Thank you, Roxanne. I want to get as many callers in as possible. And Kevin, off mic, I'll tell you what Nubia is, because that's a whole conversation. Clorinda in the Bronx. Hey, welcome.
Hi. Oh, my goodness. First time caller. Thank you for all that you do, Hunter.
You. Welcome. You're muffled, so let's get right in, because we only got like a minute and a half. So I want to hear every good thing that comes out of your mouth, Clorinda.
Originates.
Okay, take her down, Smiz, because I can't hear her. Let's go to Ava in Indiana. And don't hang up on her. Yes, hey Ava.
Hi Karen. Hi, how are you? The first time caller. Hi Kevin. How are you?
Peace and blessings.
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, thank you all so much for your platform that you do, and I'll make my comment brief about the movie. My husband and I went to see the movie, and I was so excited when Viola decided to do and produce this movie, because I had did some research prior to even seeing the movie and knew a little bit about the Dahomey women. And what I wanted to say was that, first of all, the movie was awesome. It doesn't romanticize colonization or colonialism like people, I guess, were saying out on their criticism about it. But what I understand is that, the Dahomey warriors, they themselves were victims of sex and slave trafficking, and they were sold to the king by their family members. And if we want to talk about negative about our own movies and boycott our movies about slave trading, then why not tell the other side of our narrative when we do a movie about how these women were treated in their countries or their struggles, and there are more of our stories to tell, so with different perspectives. So I just want to say that to the people who are out there criticizing, who have not even seen the movie, then make a movie about it and talk about the other side of it, but just go support the doggone thing, because it was an awesome movie.
Or don't. You don't even have to support it, but keep your mouths closed if you don't know what you're talking about. Like the ignorance that is prevalent. Like, you ain't got to support it, just be quiet. Kevin Powell is back. In addition to your latest Grocery Shopping with My Mother, which is a collection of amazing poetry, and the 15 other books that you've done. What else are you working on?
Well, it's 15 books in total.
Okay.
Well, I'm actually my next two books. Well, you remember that Tupac book? That's still happening. The biography of Tupac Shakur. That's part of the reason why I've been doing a lot of research, going back and researching ancient Africa. So this is all gratuitous, but working on the Pac book, and then I got an offer that I couldn't turn down. A publisher offered to do a collection of my writings over 30 years. So the Kevin Powell Reader. Yeah, writings, interviews that I've done with people ranging from bell hooks to Tupac, and a lot of other folks is happening. Plus a couple of my speeches and interviews in there as well. Like it's humbling, because I had to go back. I actually had my very first published piece when I was 17 is in a book. That's what opens the book. I realized I had a lot of bad writing, but luckily I have a few good things and decent things. And so I'm really excited about the collection too.
What though? I mean, we're different in that I don't keep anything. Like you kept, I keep nothing. Like I'm always on to the next, which is, I think it's a superpower. I don't spend a lot of time, reminiscing, going back. But I appreciate what you said when the caller said, I wish you were here 10, 15 years ago, what have you. And I'm like, 10, 15 years ago, I wasn't this person. To be able to look at the arc of your growth through your writing is a gift that I can't give myself, because I don't really have any of my writing to go back to say, well, I do have books, but I never reread a book after I've done it. It's done. I'm like, boom, let's move on. What's the next one? What's the next one? But to see something you wrote at 17 must be, ooh.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm the same way. Articles, blogs, poems, I write them, books, and then I never read them again. But this process, I've been working on the Reader all year, just as I've been working on the Tupac book all year. And it forced me to go back and read stuff I hadn't looked at in years and find stuff. And what you also learn too is that a lot of stuff from the 90s and before, even the early 2000s, wasn't even still isn't digitized. And so luckily I do have like a lot of files, and I save stuff. How we used to cut our articles out back in the day. I save stuff from places. It's humbling. I do think that we should do it periodically, because it also is a conversation at this stage in our journey, yours as well, not just your writings, but your show. These are our archives, and someone's gonna, listen, Karen, I go back and listen to interviews of people from the 60s and 50s on radio stuff. Like I'm on YouTube all the time, and someone's going to years from now, they're going to come back and listen to the Karen Hunter show. What was going on in the 2020s? What was going on in the 2010s? And so that's, and I know I kind of call us young elders, because we're that Generation X. We're in between the millennials, and some of us have children that are millennials or Generation Z. And then we have the civil rights generation ahead of us, the boomers ahead of us. We're like in the middle. We remember when none of this stuff was happening digitally. There was no satellite radio, there wasn't any of this stuff. But also at the same time, we literally saw it all happen. So we have a really interesting position. So I do think that we have to spend some time just kind of reflecting. It forced me to just really be like, wow, man, you really, I remember being a 20-year-old writer writing about Howard Beach. Remember Howard Beach?
Wow. What was his name? Michael Griffin. And then it was Yusef.
Yusef Hawkins was Bensonhurst.
Yes, Bensonhurst.
I was in the middle of all of that as a young journalist, man. Before the music journalism, before all of that stuff happened, because I wanted to be a news reporter. I had no interest in being a music journalist. I didn't even know what a music journalist was. But, I did read Nelson George and Greg Tate and Lisa Jones and Lisa Kennedy and Carol Cooper and those folks, and Harry Allen at the Village Voice.
Yes.
There was a lot of Black writers at the Village Voice, and so I paid attention to what they were doing. But I also religiously read, shout out to Peter Noel when he was at the City Sun, and I read the Amsterdam News. I ended up writing for the Amsterdam News, and it was just and so I do think, like, it's okay to say, wow, I'm as hungry as I was as a 20-something as a writer, even in my 50s now. I'm just as hungry. But putting together the collective stuff made me say, man, okay, this is cool, but what you gonna do for the next 30 years, next 40 years? You got work to do. You know what I mean?
Ironically,
so that's the Sankofa for me. Sorry.
All right. No, don't apologize. When you said Peter Noel, I wouldn't be sitting here if Peter Noel didn't go on vacation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he went on vacation at WWRL.
Wow.
And the producer reached out because he read a column and asked if I would fill in for him while he was on vacation. Peter Noel never came back from vacation because I housed the week that they gave me. And they were like, okay, Peter Noel, goodbye.
Wow.
Karen Hunter, would you like to be on the radio? And that happened. I would not have even thought, because I wasn't thinking about doing radio, but like, what's the next book? About to murder this journalism thing.
Wow.
But I fell in love with this medium, to be able to talk in real time and people call up and you get to process your own thoughts. And I do have some of my radio from 25 years ago. And I was talking the same stuff today. So I want to ask you, and that's wild, right? There's some people listening to me right now that listened to me on WWRL 25 years ago. And I was talking the same stuff that I'm talking today, which tells me that we haven't moved too much ahead freedom-wise, right? I don't want to be talking about this stuff 25 years from now. That will piss me off. And I'm not somebody that needs to have a career wrapped in lack of black progress. To me, if your whole career is rooted in black people not moving forward, you are useless to us.
I agree.
So, Kevin Powell, how do we honor our ancestors, honor what happened to us, and not sit in that trauma to the point that it paralyzes us from building the world that we want to live in?
You can't move without a plan. You have to have a plan of action. I do these speeches all the time around the country and even overseas. For me, it's six areas where Black people need to be empowered. It's spiritually, it's politically, it's culturally, it's financially, and it's two areas that we often don't like to talk about. You mentioned one of them earlier, mental health. You actually mentioned both of them, mental health and physical health. So spiritually, number one, politically, number two, culturally, number three, financially, number four, mental health, number five, and physical health, number six. And so the thing is, like, if you go to a doctor, like I go to a holistic doctor here in Brooklyn, New York, where I've been for a long time, he gives an analysis of here's where you are. And so we do need to look back. We need to know where we came from. That's our foundation. Where do we come from? How did we get here? But then the question becomes, okay, what do we need to do to go forward? You know what I mean? It's like, if I have a family history of diabetes and high blood pressure, which I do, that's why I'm a vegan. That's why I'm very careful about how much salt and sugar that I take into my body. That's why I'm constantly drinking cups of water. You know what I mean? That's why I'm heading to the gym after this. One of the things I have to do after this show is go to the gym, go work out. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that I haven't fallen off the wagon. Of course I have many times. I mean, because we have all these forces coming at us from different places, but when I think about it, inside of my phone, in my notes section of my iPhone, is literally, here's your daily rituals, here's the things you need to do. And then I also know there's things I have to do for the larger community, like what you do for the larger community. I'm excited to hear about, the narrative and the Nubians. I mean, this radio show, like, this is an incredible platform, and your writings, you know what I mean? Because it's like, you said something that was so funny, Karen. People are literally there. We don't have to say any names, and I'm sorry they even said Dr. Gates' name earlier. No disrespect to anyone, but what I was trying to say earlier is that stop saying that Black folks were involved in the slave trade if you're not going to have the same courage and even more courage to say that the ultimate responsibility of the slave trade that brought our people all over the world is white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism. And the first global economy in the world was called slavery, and we had nothing to do with that global economy other than being products of that global economy. And then when it comes to us who are benefiting, there are people who we used to call poverty pimps. There are people who literally only exist off the misery of Black people suffering in America and globally. And there are people who have made millions of dollars. They are famous. They have radio shows, TV shows, best-selling books. You know who I'm talking about. You know what I mean? But if the thing for me, the question we have to ask fundamentally, Karen, what is a leader? They, he, she, they, however they identify themselves. One, a leader changes the direction of the conversation, creates a new vocabulary. That's number one. You do that. Number two, that person, those folks who call themselves leaders, create an institution, business, something that is actually going to redirect and help to empower people. You know what I mean? There's a reason why so many Black men, for example, say the most important book they've ever read in their life was the autobiography of Malcolm X, because even if he just did nothing else, that book literally saved my life. Literally saved my life. By the time I put that book down as an 18-year-old, I was like, I got to do something else. That's what I'm talking about. A leader, if they are serious about being a leader, then you create other leaders. You create other leaders. Leaders create other leaders. It's not, me, and I. It's like, what can I do to help other people to see what I see, to do what I'm doing, to also have a plan of action, no matter where they are. But I think that's the critical thing. And so we can't go forward if we keep following people who are preachers at churches who have all these name brand jewelry and name brand suits and are pimping people out of money. And like, why are the people in the church still poor? You know what I mean? We can't be leaders if these folks are some of these folks call themselves elected officials or politicians. They just move from one position to another. They have no idea to empower. I mean, why is it that I've been to all 50 states in this country, every major city, medium cities, small towns, the black part of the cities look exactly the same? How many more chicken shacks, barbershops, beauty salons, rent-a centers, check cashing places? You feel me for a second? And you say that you're an elected official. This is my district. You should be ashamed that your district even looks like that. You know what I mean? And so it's like, or your church should be ashamed that it's sitting there with your church looks great, but then surrounding you is all of this decadence. I'm like, what is the plan? And so you're right. What's the plan? And the plan has to be, how do we empower ourselves holistically? And that's what's been missing. And I really believe, Karen, with all due respect, I think you are one of the few people who actually has done stuff. I think there's other folks. I think we also, as Black people, have got to stop chasing people just because they have 1 million Twitter followers or 1 million Instagram followers. But pay attention. I can tell you for a fact, Karen, I don't even mention your people don't even know how long I know you. I've known you. Your name comes up all the time. I was listening to Karen Hunter's show. I was listening to the Karen Hunter show. Karen said this, Karen says that, because you have integrity. You have ideas, and you're the very embodiment of do something that's going to move the needle forward. We got to stop following people just because they're famous, they have money, they're celebrities. If they're not doing anything, why are we following them other than just being sheep?
On that, and I agree with everything you said. Kevin Powell is here. And I'm not just, the frustration that I have, because I'd rather sit and read and write. I'd rather not sit and plot and plan, because I'm sitting and plotting and planning because I'm like, we've been in the same cycle for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Like, when are we going to move out of it? But more importantly, to the Woman King, the beauty of that movie is that it didn't center whiteness. It didn't center a power structure. The power structure was in the community. The community knew what power it had, and it went out and did it. And there's a scene, I'm going to give away a little bit, where she defies Viola character defies what the king wanted her to do because it was the right thing to do. That's leadership. You could tell me what to do, whether you're my mother, my father, my president. If it's wrong, I should have the conviction to go do the right thing and suffer the consequences. And she was willing to do that alone. But because of her leadership, the people following her would not let her go alone. I feel like, Kevin, what does it take? Because my frustration is we follow rappers, singers, people. They're our leaders, right? They get to sit with the next president. How? No other community puts their entertainers in front of world leaders to make decisions about what's happening with us. Why do we do that? And how can we stop it? Like, I'm so sick of it.
There's been this incredible manipulation of our communities. I believe that almost immediately as the civil rights movement was ending in the late 60s, and that's for a marker of the assassination of Dr. King, but we know other stuff happened after that with the civil rights movement, Black Power movement, Black Liberation movement. We know that. But there was an instant kind of redirection of things. And we know we were devastated. Heroin destroyed parts of our community in the 70s. We know what AIDS and crack did to our communities in the 1980s and 1990s. And we're still dealing with the residual effects of that. But there also something else interesting happened, was the explosion of the celebrity culture. This happened even before social media took off. And so think about it. When you go back to the 1960s, you were very clear that, okay, Dr. King, Faneuil Hamer, Ella Baker, Malcolm X, those sisters and brothers, Bayard Rustin, James Baldwin, those were folks who were visionaries for the community. You know what I mean? Who wrote better than Baldwin? Lorraine Hansberry, you know what I'm saying? But they were clear, okay, people like Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier or Diane Carroll, these are celebrities, or Aretha Franklin, they're celebrities. They're going to help to support the vision of the people who actually have the ideas. I mean, you're a writer. I mean, yeah, you could say you're a media person, but you are a leader because you also have built something. You've always built something. And so as long as I've known you, you've been building something. You've had something that is an institution. Again, did you have an institution that's actually helping to empower people? And so we have flipped it where we put people who oftentimes are not qualified to speak on behalf of us. And I love sports. I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a hip hop head for life. I mean, I curated the first exhibit on the history of hip hop at the Brooklyn Museum 20 years ago. I'm a diehard hip hop head. My next book is on Tupac Shakur. But I also know, because I was raised up as an activist, that part of being a leader is you actually have to read My saying, hashtag read, study, travel. You actually have to read and study and travel. Just look behind. Karen and I are talking voice to voice, but I can see her on screen. I see Ida B. Wells to her left, over her right shoulder. I see Tupac Shakur over her left shoulder. And I see books and videotapes, DVD. I see stuff around her, which says she is a digester of information, of knowledge. How are you going to be a leader if you can't even articulate what happened in the past, connect it to the present, and they remix it, which is what Karen Hunter's calling for, remix it for a plan of action going so we can go forward. If you can't do that, that's why we end up being in a state of paralysis, because people think just because they have a platform on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter that they can just put anything out there. I mean, some of the stuff that I read, and I say this with all love to all people. You can tell people who read and study and travel and actually are critical thinkers, and you can tell people who just because they have a laptop or a cell phone and an opinion that they can just put anything out there, like the people who have been trashing The Woman King without even seeing the movie, without even knowing anything about the history of Black women from ancient Africa to the present. There would be no civil rights movement in America if it wasn't for Black women protesting and boycotting in the 30s and 40s and 50s before Rosa Parks. But if you don't read, study, travel, you don't even know that. So that's what the problem is.
Kevin Powell, also a leader. Some of you may have seen him on the first Real World.
That little show. That little show.
Yeah, and I hesitate to even bring it up, but Heather B's on the channel, so I can't not say that's the first time some of us saw Kevin Powell. B? Yes, the Heather B at noon right here Eastern on Urban View. Would love to see Kevin Powell come in more. That said, You're in your journey into manhood. I feel like, and I've been talking to Laree Daniel Favors about this because we're about to launch.
Shout out to Laree. Shout out to Brooklyn.
Yes, Brooklyn in the building. We need we're about to invest in creating a young person's place in Nubia, where young people power it, where young people have conversations with each other, not puppeted by adults. Rites of passage, into manhood, is that something that we should be exploring? Like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Viola talks with Oprah about this in her interview, and she said growing up, she did not, to her, being a woman was white, it was blonde, it was dainty, it was willowy, it was soft-spoken, light on your feet. It was all of the things that she was not, right? And so she questioned, am I a woman? Am I feminine enough to be considered, for these roles? And with this one movie, I think she shattered. And she said, being in here, what I was a woman in a different way, she said. But they stilted her imagination of self. And she's broken that open. And it's the power of artistry. She said, we don't have boundaries, as I said earlier. So moving forward, a rite of passage, I don't imagine it being binary. I don't imagine it being rights for boys into manhood, girls into womanhood, even though ancient Africa might have had that. What do you imagine for us moving forward, and are you optimistic?
I am. You asked me what I was working on. I also have moved in, just like you moved into radio, I've moved into film. And my first documentary film, When We Free the World, will be out in the first half of 2023. It is a deep dive into manhood and fatherhood through the lens of Black boys and Black men. We literally have men and boys in the film from age 10, 11 to 90 something, Karen. We have Black men and the males in the film, Black men in the film who are straight, who are gay, who are trans, who are disabled, differently abled, who are short stature, little people. We have folks who are formerly incarcerated. We have folks who have been multiply incarcerated. We have folks who have PhDs in the film. We did a deep dive. When I say we have to go back and look at where we came from, we looked at the history of cinema, and we said to ourselves, okay, when you look about Black male images, when have we ever seen all these different types of Black males brought together? Like, imagine if you really did have Baldwin and Malcolm and Dr. King and Bayard Rustin in the same room having a conversation, two straight brothers and two gay brothers, all equally important to the civil rights movement. But because of homophobia in our community or other things in our community, those kind of things didn't happen as much as they should have happened. And so that's the work. We've been working on this film for almost 4 years. Is literally in the editing phase now. And when you ask about a rites of passage program, I think manhood should be rooted, honestly, in peace and love and nonviolence. I think that manhood should be should not be rooted in the oppression of any other people. We should not be oppressing women. We should, as straight dudes, we should not, those of us who are straight like myself, we should not be practicing homophobia, transphobia. We should not be practicing ageism. I don't think that, what Byron Hurt talks about in his film, Hazing, which people should watch on PBS streaming, Byron Hurt's film Hazing on PBS streaming, violence should not be the foundation of manhood. Only violence that I believe in, quote unquote, is self-defense. That's it. I don't believe in the things that I was taught growing up about being a boy, being a man. It wasn't a rites of passage program, but it's certainly called the Black community. It's called the family structure. It's called the church. It's called school. It's called fights after school. It's called fights at lunchtime. I was taught that you had to fight. I was taught that you had to go around grabbing girls' body parts when you start to see things and feel things in the third and fourth grade, which is now I realize that we were being taught sexual assault. We were being taught how to rape. We were being taught as boys to participate in rape culture. You know what I mean? And so manhood has to be the opposite of that. And it's like, how can I sit around and talk about, what I am upset about George Floyd. I'm upset about Trayvon Martin. I'm upset about all these brothers getting blown away, but I don't value bodies of women and girls equally as I value my own body. You know what I mean? And it's just like, this is the kind of stuff we talk about. And even when you see the visceral responses to the Woman King and a lot of men, unfortunately, having these reactions like, I don't want to watch this film. What's it about? Is it any good? I'm like, that's called sexism, brothers. That's called the notion that you think if a man didn't make something, if a man didn't create something, if a man is not centered, just how white people get upset when white folks are not centered, which Toni Morrison warned us about, then there's something somehow is not of value. And if you feel that Black people should be centered and not white people, then you should also feel that it's equally valuable that women and girls are centered. I mean, when I was listening to Viola Davis's speech that you played earlier, Karen, I thought about something I've been wanting to ask my 79-year-old mother for a long time now. What did you actually want to be when you were a girl? Especially when you didn't see anything that was positive about yourself anywhere. You know what I mean? And so I think that, that rites of passage for any gender identity, no matter how we identify ourselves, the fundamental thing about it should be, I value myself. I wrote a piece for The Guardian that people could check out. You ask me what I'm doing. I have a piece about the Queen, the King, the royal family. And I talked about how I was taught to worship them, which was worshiping whiteness and worshiping global racism, when I was a child in the form of the wedding. Remember the wedding of Lady Diana and Prince Charles?
Yes.
And and it wasn't until years later I realized, wait a minute. These same people they don't work. What job do they really have? They've benefited from the plunder of all these foreign lands of color, of working people, and here they are sitting on this stuff. And I'm being told that I should center them. Black people, we're spiritual people. And so I don't wish bad on anyone. I honor and I think we should mourn any death, but your death is not more valuable than this death. Your mother is not more valuable than my mother. You feel what I'm saying? You know what I mean? And so I just think that when we talk about a rites of passage, it really means reconstructing how we see ourselves and see the world in a way that's healthy and not in a way that's wallowing in trauma after trauma, generation after generation. That's what a real rites of passage needs to be. And it needs to be a rites of passage that's not rooted in hurting anyone who might be different than us.
Kevin Powell, 15 books. Soon to be Oscar award winning. Not that matters, because as long as we validate it, and I demand that you screen your first documentary, Inside Nubia. We just did the Marcus Garvey documentary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. Roy Anderson screened it with our 1,000+ Nubians who joined us live for that with conversations. And I want you to come in and talk about it. 866-801-8255 is the number. Kevin Powell is here. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about the responsibility that we have, like you doing this film, showing everything. How do we get men in particular to understand that it's weak? Like you're showing your fears, you're showing your insecurities by being homophobic, by being, misogynistic, but, by being afraid, by saying, oh, I'm not following a woman. Like you're really telling on yourself, oh, there's a gay guy in there. Why are you concerned? Are you interested? Like your concern is telling. And if you're not like that, why do you care? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, why does that bother you so much? Well, I don't want your children are seeing things anyway, and it's not some of it's biological. You can't even stop it from happening. And why would you want to? Does that mean you're not going to love your child anymore? Like there's so many things that I think we need to work through that is rooted in that mental health piece, because that disease needs to be addressed. And I think people aren't addressing it. They're just going out and hurting people more.
You just said the magic word, Karen. We've said it many years. Hurt people hurt other people. And so if you haven't dealt with your own stuff, you're going to just perpetually hurt other people. I mean, you know, and I'm sure you've dealt with it on this show, the number of straight dudes who have felt the need to go kill trans Black women. I mean, like, you know, what kind of sick notion? I mean, it's about power, a false sense of power. You know, you feel powerless as a man, as a straight man, as a Black man, however you identify yourself, and then you take it out on other people. I mean, you know, if we're honest about, you know, R. Kelly, if we're honest about Bill Cosby, that was about power, this false sense of power, and who they can control. Look who they hurt, women. Look who they hurt, women. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, you know, what kind of sick notion of power would you drug a woman and then have sex with her unconscious body? I mean, what is this about? You know, what is it about? Why are you urinating on a 14-year-old girl and videotaping it? You know what I mean? And, you know, what's equally sick is that many people in our community knew this stuff was happening for years and years and years, and people wouldn't say anything about it. You know what I mean? Which is no different than how in the plantations, you know, the slaves under the thumb of the slave master and the overseers, that whole system, were too afraid, or whatever it was. They had so bought into everything that they just didn't say anything as stuff was happening. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
I mean, there was also, you know, it's like Pavlov. Oh, if this person speaks out, their foot gets cut off. If this person speaks out, they get beaten to death. If this person speaks out, they're going to, you know, hang them and then keep their body up for everybody to see while we're picking cotton. So like Pavlov, you know, you have conditioned these minds to the brutality of what resistance will, you know, any resistance is going to come with some brutality. I'd rather live, as opposed to our maroon brothers and sisters, whether they're in Haiti, whether they're in the mountains in North Carolina, or whether they're in the island of Jamaica with Nanny and those folk, realize I'd rather die. Or the millions of people that jumped overboard, I'd rather die than be in bondage, because bondage is death. I don't know, you know. Self-preservation.
I'm smiling. You're right. When I came home from college, my first semester, first year of school, I had already become absorbed. You know, I had suddenly become a part of Black history. I was like absorbing it everywhere. I talked for like a long time. Me and my mom, I'm an only child. Karen, after I was done talking, my mother just looked at me. She said, "Well, you know what they did to Dr. King, right?" And I was like, I had no response for that. But I realized the residual fear of some of our people of what happened to Dr. King and Malcolm and other folks. A generation later, will say that if you do this. But I made a conscious decision a long time ago that I am not a coward. I am not a coward. I think that fear is a prison. And have I paid a price with my writing career, my speaking career? You know, have I lost opportunities? Absolutely. But I figured it out, because I also know that I roll with God. I roll with God, and I roll with the power of my ancestors, my ancestral spirit and ancestral forces. And I know that truth, as Dr. King said, crushed to earth shall rise again. And I just think that, you know, we make a decision. I decided a long time ago, I'm going to live a very simple, non-materialistic life. I don't need a lot of stuff, you know. But what's most important to me is not being a coward. You know what I mean? I am not ever comfortable with being a coward, and also having the courage to say, I've made mistakes and I need to transform my life. I need to go in a different direction. If you'd have told me 25, 30 years ago, Kevin Powell, not only would you be speaking out against racism, which I certainly do, but you're going to be speaking out against sexism and homophobia and transphobia and ableism and all forms of oppression and hatred. You believe that any form of oppression is unacceptable. I'd have been like, nah, that ain't me. I'm about Black power, homie. And so I'm saying, you know, I had to make it, but I also encountered Audre Lorde. I encountered Bell Hooks. I encountered Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and all these amazing Black women. And how could I ignore them? And what they forced me to do was to understand why my mother spoke to me the way she did when I was growing up, about the kind of man I needed to be. My mother didn't understand what feminism was. She didn't understand what sexism was, but she did understand there's something wrong with the fact that Black women have been there consistently for Black men, but there's a number of Black men, not all Black men, but quite a few, who are not there supporting Black women in the same way. Case in point is a number of brothers on social media who are trashing the Woman King without seeing it this weekend.
Yeah, I was called a mammy for just calling for support. I find that interesting.
That's insane.
Isn't it? I was like, okay, Kevin Powell, Audre Lorde, I feel like, when you're ready, your teacher shows up, right? Because a lot of people, I wish I had Dr. Carr when I was in. No, you may not have been ready for Dr. Carr. And Dr. Carr wasn't Dr. Carr until this day that we're in right now. For you, Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks, like how? Talk about how that happened.
Well, shout out to Asha Bendelli, the writer. In 1992, 93, Miss Lorde, I believe, died in 93. Asha asked me if I wanted to interview Audre Lorde. I said yes, because I was beginning to hear her name from sisters around me, Black women around me, and Asha arranged it. It was a phone call. It was remember Emerge magazine. It was for Emerge magazine.
Of course. Wilbur gave me $15,000 to do a basketball league. He was so dope. He was so dope.
Emerge magazine gave me the opportunity, and I interviewed Miss Lorde over the phone. She was coughing a lot because she was literally dying of cancer. Audre Lorde was literally dying of cancer, and it turned out to be the very last interview she ever did. And this is why it is important to go back, because remember I said I'm putting together right now my collected writings and speeches, etc. The Kevin Powell Reader will include the original interview that I did with Audre Lorde for the first time to be published anywhere. You know what I mean? When the book comes out. And she kept telling me, there's a couple of things that stuck out to me. She talked about the treatment she experienced as a Black woman, in the movement. She talked about the experiences she went through as a lesbian Black woman. She talked about how people disregarded and disrespected James Baldwin and called him all kinds of names because he was openly gay. And, but she also said to me, just do the work. No matter what, you have to do the work. You have to do the work. And I remember how much love she had, just love that she had for people in spite of all the stuff that she went through. That stuck with me. And then, Bell Hooks, I'm trying not to get emotional here, but I literally was one of the few people that was able to see her last December in her home as she was dying, Karen. I got on the plane. I got the call, Kevin, you need to come. Belle loved you. You need to be here. And I got to sit there. She couldn't talk at that point. Belle couldn't talk. But I realized that from the moment I met her in 1994, when I did an interview with Bell Hooks for Vibe magazine, up to the present, people can go to YouTube. There's a conversation that she and I did at the New School that's right there on YouTube. She literally transformed my life. Belle became as important to me as Malcolm X's autobiography. And you're talking about a woman who wrote close to 40 books in 40 years. Just prolific, writing about a range of things. And she challenged me nonstop, but Belle also had a deep love for Black men. She literally wrote books about manhood. Why did she do that? Because she's like, Kevin, more brothers need to step up and write books, about the subject matter. She's the reason why I ended up writing books like the Black Male Handbook and things like that. But it was profound, being in her house and just holding her hand and just telling her that I love. I cried a lot, Karen. And I wrote a poem that's going to get published in a couple of weeks because it's later this month, September 25th would have been her birthday. But I just, you have to be open. We have to be open to new experiences and new ideas. I ain't trying to tell people you got to believe in everything I believe in. What I believe in ultimately, Karen, how do we move forward is love. I've experienced a lot of hate in my life. I've been hateful in my life. I've been a hater in my life. I'm like, well, what is wrong with love? As my partner says, kindness, and having a basic regard for other people. You know what I'm saying? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? You know what I mean? And I think what has gotten lost in this whole thing with Queen Elizabeth II, I don't forget it. It's like how poorly that royal family treated Princess Diana when she was alive. You know what I mean? And honestly, how they literally, if you're paying close attention, how they've been treating Harry and Meghan over the last week. You know what I mean? If nothing else, Harry is the grandson of Queen Elizabeth II. I'm like, he served 10 years in their military, but Prince Andrew, who has been connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and we know that whole sexual escapades there. He gets to wear his military uniform. He didn't really do anything in the military, and Harry's being told. It's just like what I think about now is where's the love and where's the humanity that we have, and so that's what's really important to me at this stage of my life. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't encountered people like Bell Hooks and Audre Lorde. And like, how can I talk about my community, the Black community, and I don't even acknowledge the people in the community, other than, straight Black dudes. Like, I mean, that's insane. That's just insane to me. Like, women don't exist. Queer folks don't exist. Same gender loving folks don't exist. Disabled folks don't exist. Like, we all matter. We all were kidnapped together. We were all brought on those slave ships together. We all had to work in those fields and those houses together. We all have gone through all kinds of atrocities together. We have each other. And what we cannot afford to do, which I think was the point, one of the points of the Woman King, bringing it back to that film, is this divide and conquer is the death of us. And so when a Viola Davis rises up, think about where she came from. Look what she had to go through, what she survived. You know what I mean? To get to this place, to be able to make a film like this is it's Black people, Karen, are miracles. Black people, in spite of everything that's been thrown at us, we are miracles. The Black Panther film was a miracle. The Woman King is a miracle. Chadwick Boseman, knowing that he had cancer and still going to the very end of his life, making movies for us. And I knew Chadwick. I interviewed Chadwick, and I mean, the man was dying. And he still made films that were centered around us to the very end of his life. That's what Viola's doing.
And it's our responsibility, those of us who don't have those talents. We all have a talent, right? We don't all have that particular talent, to support the people who are doing that, to your blueprint for what it looks like. We don't all have the voice. We don't all have the writing ability. We don't all have the acumen or the intellect, but we all have something. We all have something. And, maybe it's not dollars. Maybe it's just support. Maybe it's just the energy that you put out, because we are magical. And there's an unseen world. There's an unseen world that's just as vast as the seen that we never tap into, but we must. That's our superpower. And
I think that for me, I don't have an issue with healthy debate that is rooted in love and trying to your point, Karen, earlier, moving the needle forward. But when it's ugly and mean-spirited and clearly Black self-hatred manifesting itself over and over again with some of the stuff I've seen on social media, I'm like, this has nothing to do with solutions, because it has to come back to, well, what is the plan? What is the solution? What do you actually want us to do here? You know what I mean? If the best you can do is just trash one Black person after another, and you can't see anything, okay, let's say Tyler Perry. If you don't like his films, well, I'm not a fan of Tyler Perry's films either. But what I can't ignore is he owns a studio. And there's a whole bunch of stuff happening there with Black people. You know what I mean? And he's trying his best with what I think his real gift is his business genius. It may not even be.
It is.
May not even be him as an artist, but the art helped him to get to his real genius, which is, I'm a businessman, or as Jay-Z said, I'm a businessman. You know what I mean? That's what it is. But I think that, we can't see that, and even, notice I even stepped back and said, let me correct what I said about Dr. Gates. I was like, I'm not interested. Like, I very rarely call people out by names anymore, because I think that even that helps to perpetuate the divide and conquer. I mean, I'll say types of people. If I'm talking about certain types of people, you call it trauma porn, I'm with you there. People who seem to need Black people to be miserable. People only post videos of Black folks getting murdered by the police. I'm like, man, you ain't got nothing else to post? You have nothing else to show other than look at this? I mean, I'm like, that says to me that that you're benefiting off of all the stuff that is hurting us, and we're going to react in a certain kind of way. And the next thing you're going to do is say, here's the way you can donate and support this. And then, I mean, who I'm talking about.
Oh, my gosh.
Who I'm talking about.
So when we know better, we are responsible to do better. You can't sit in that same position, which is why I think a lot of people run away from true knowledge, because then they're required to do something. Like you just mentioned, my father used to say, you're going to get high blood pressure. I got high blood pressure. Your mother had, and I was like, I will never have high blood pressure. And to this day, I don't only have great blood pressure and low cholesterol, despite carrying a little bit too much weight, because I made a conscious decision that I was not going to eat the way they ate. And as a result, they didn't eat the way I eat. My mother is amazing right now, because she changed her diet primarily because I wouldn't come over on Sunday unless there was salmon and broccoli and vegetables. We're gonna eat fish and vegetables, and then we've taken it to another level. But now she's eating out of her garden. You know what I mean? Like there are levels to this, and it's not too late. Like, we've been fed these myths that are not true, like white is right, but also that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's some bullcrap. Jack of all trades, master of none. That doesn't apply to us. We have no boundaries. We can master everything, and no matter what age you are, you can learn. You can change. You can be different.
There's a couple of things you said that I want to respond to. I think this is such a wonderful conversation. And thank you for even texting me today and asking me if I can do this, because I probably needed this conversation as much as anybody else. One, if I'm honest about it, Karen, 2015 and 2020 were the 5 worst years of my life. You know, I went through a lot of personal stuff, went through a divorce. COVID happened, obviously. I lost a close friend literally 2 years ago this month to suicide, a Black male. Yes, ma'am. And who was on his way. Brilliant young brother, who I knew literally when he was a child, when he was born. A lot of stuff happened, you know, deep depression, thoughts of suicide. I'm being real with you here. And I'm someone who, like I said, veganism, you know what I've talked about through the years, and going to therapy for years, which I really believe in, and other healing paths. And I literally probably gained about 40, 50 pounds that I had never gained in my life. And people are like, but you a vegan, Kev. Well, there's a lot of vegan junk food. Let me tell you that.
Facts.
You know,
Facts.
Which is why I'm not one of those crazy vegans who judges people because they eat meat. I mean, it's, you know, what I realized what I was doing, Karen, was emotionally eating my way through depression and my friend's suicide and the COVID isolation we were experiencing 2 years ago when it was when it really was that first year, all that kind of stuff. And I just kept eating and eating and eating. And man, I started to feel very differently. And so I'm saying that what I also realized, which is why I think we got to give ourselves grace, because of all the external stuff we have to deal with as human beings, no matter what our identities are, no matter what our race or culture is. But if we're talking specifically about Black people, add some extra stuff to that. I understand why folks like, man, I just need something to take the edge off. Can I get a drink? Man, I just need that joint right now. I'm so glad they legalized marijuana in my state. Man, can we just stop at White Castle real quick or Popeyes real quick? You know what I'm saying? Man, can I just have another piece of that red velvet cake? Because it's like we're trying to find joy any way we can. We're trying to find some relief from all this stuff that we have to deal with any way we can. And this is why, you know, I think it's important because I'm sharing this with you because I think your audience needs to hear it. Ain't nobody perfect out here. This stuff hurts. You know what I mean? It hurts. I remember, you know, think about it. It was May 2020, you know, literally while we're in ice, we're sheltering and we get this video across our screens of George Floyd being kneed to death for 9 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And this is just a couple months after Breonna Taylor is shot in her bed in Kentucky. You know what I mean? And that's just a little bit after Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging in Georgia, is shot by some crazy white folks down there just because he was jogging in Georgia. You know what I mean? And so you can't tell me that this stuff doesn't do something to us in every situation, in every way, spiritually and emotionally. And I do think it contributes. I do believe it contributes to our physical health. I think every body type is beautiful. I think every body type is beautiful. You know what I mean? I don't get caught up in that. I think I applaud Lizzo for saying, you know what? I don't care what y'all said about me. I'm going to take back ownership of who I am. I'm not going to let you tell. Just her work is no different to me than what Viola Davis said about being that little dark-skinned Black girl. You're not going to tell me that I'm ugly anymore. I don't care what you said to me. I'm taking ownership of my life. And I just think that, Karen, that's what it's about for us as a part of the plan. Because when you start to do that individually, it starts to affect other people. So why your work is important with this radio show and the books and the group that you have is because you've long ago said, I've got to do something differently. You know what I mean? You were taught that. It was in you. I can be something that's empowering because I see examples of it. And I need to let other people know that they can be empowered as well. But what we need to say to our people, especially, is like, y'all, you know what? I hear y'all want to be on social media all the time. That's cool. Y'all want to talk bad about people. That's cool. But at the end of the day, when I die, Karen Hunter, I want people to say, you know what, Kevin Powell, he may not have been the perfect person in the world. He was honest. He tried to change as much as he could. And he helped somebody else other than himself. And he also did something for his life. So he didn't end his life where he started his life, which was in a bunch of confusion and misery and ignorance. You know what I'm saying?
I want to hear more from you. So you got to come back maybe once a month if you can't come every week. But Kevin Powell, you gave me life. I know you gave a lot of people. I'm seeing folk sharing your story. I love you so much. And I
love you too.
Thank you.
Just, you know, and I love Black women. I love Black women. And when I was watching The Woman King, man, I was so proud of Viola and Gina. And I don't care if people say, well, it was two white sisters who wrote the script and came up with the story idea. Well, guess what? Like you said, it was Viola Louisa. There was John Brown. You know what I'm saying? There was Howard Zinn, who wrote the People's History of the United States. You know, I mean, I can go through a list of folks. I mean, we need allies too, y'all. You say you want people to help us. And then when they help us, then you don't want them to help us. And that speaks also to the confusion. Do you want help at times? Do you want support at times? Or do you not want help at times? You know what I mean? I'm not saying center them. We ain't centering them. And we know notice if you look at most of the interviews that are being done, it's Viola and Gina and the Black sisters in the film. And that says something. And I'm like, yo, this film is incredible, man. I mean, it made me think about the fact that back in the 90s, when Whoopi Goldberg was blowing up in a big way as a box office star, we know The Color Purple happened in the 80s, but I noticed that my mother kept going to see Whoopi Goldberg films. And then it hit me, and I'm trying not to cry here, Karen Hunter. Whoopi Goldberg is a dark-skinned Black woman. My mother's a dark-skinned Black woman. My mother was going to the theaters because she wanted to see herself.